To start things off, I was provided a copy of Tales of Vesperia for this video. After hearing about the Tales series for years, I finally gave it a try, and I was hooked. Tales is an action JRPG series that features co-op. Vesperia touches on a number of themes like technology, humanity, and society. I'm going to go in depth on the narrative and mechanics of the game. I also have a number of nitpicks I want to talk about as well. Hopefully though, I can show why I think Tales of Vesperia stands as one of the better JRPGs within the last generation. Let's start with the story and characters. The world relies on what is known as Blastia to function. It's very much like electricity for us. The protagonist is Yuri Lowell. He's a young adult living in the poor area of the imperial capital of Zephyus. The Blastia operating this fountain where he lives is stolen and he needs to go get it back. And he soon finds himself going on an adventure that spans the globe several times over with a cast of friends to save the world. Yes, the Blastia and the fountain eventually gets fixed. The story does its job. It's a pretty solid adventure with lows and highs. Pacing of the story is pretty good for a 50-hour game. Where the game absolutely shines though is its cast of characters. While they like to have thoughtful monologues, they aren't perfect. They know they aren't either. Yuri teeters on the edge of being a shonen protagonist, but some things seriously set him apart from actually being one. But just look at this lad. Look at how he runs holding his weapon, how he flings his sheath every time he fights. I'm just saying, I wouldn't complain if... Yuri's really cool. He's seriously a main character you root for and boo against at times. Yuri isn't the only character with depth either. Most of the main cast have goals and ambitions and troubles of their own to overcome. It'd be pretty hard to say that anyone in the game is one-dimensional. Some come off as generic tropes of characters at first before they develop over time. Take Raven, who constantly goes on about being a pervy old man. And I mean constantly.
Yeah, I suppose it might be a bit too complicated for you, Patty.
It's too complicated for you too, old man.
He's 35. Nevertheless, his character doesn't stop there. There's a good bit of the game where you feel uneasy about the main party because they're progressing forward without addressing the issues plaguing them. It's also one of those games where random encounter music changes as you progress, just so it doesn't get stale. One of the better character dynamics is Yuri and his friend and rival, Flynn. Both had the same dream as a kid to reform the Empire from within. Flynn stuck to becoming a knight, but Yuri, as an adult, feels differently about the law. These two have the same goals, but different methods of achieving their goals. They develop independently of each other because of this. You'll find the party themselves have similar goals to antagonists, but how they ascertain their goals differ. This leads to a nice dynamic between characters' motivations. Not all characters are full of this much consideration for their perspective though. Let's talk about what the combat of Vesperia brings to the table. Combat is creative. You battle in a circular arena. You have a set of normals done with the B button and directions. Then you have a set of specials called arts done with the A button in a direction. You fight within a straight line towards your targeted enemy, but you can hold ZL to freely run around the arena. You fight with a party of 4 and can play co-op with a friend. The co-op is local, but I've heard PS4 SharePlay works just fine. On PC, you have Parsec. I can vouch for Parsec being great as long as you have the internet for it. If you play alone, your AI can actually be pretty competent. You may find sometimes they do something that you don't want them to do, like run low on TP or doing an art you don't want them to do. You have a good amount of control over AI actions, so you can stop them from doing those things. You can arrange specific strategies, not unlike the Gambit system from Final Fantasy XII. While not as in-depth, you can swap between strats mid-battle, along with arts and equipment. You can even map your party's arts to your own buttons. You unlock more arts by doing things like using other arts a certain number of times. And then there's skills. Akin to Final Fantasy IX's gem system, your characters can be assigned skills. They get more skills from using weapons. As the game goes on, you build up skills that add depth to combat. I don't show it much, but you can also play as any character you want. Everyone has different movesets and weapons. I just felt the most comfortable with Yuri through the game. At first, the combat seemed a bit of a patience game. You have to be careful throwing out some moves because they can make you unsafe. The first tutorial fight hammers this in you. Don't spam moves, use them with purpose. I love this game's tutorial. I wish other games had one this harsh. Combat may feel a little clunky at first, but be patient and block when you need to. However, while what I just said is always true, there is a better answer to the patience game. It's this short blurb in the game manual that you aren't told at all. Manual cancels. You can cancel any attack you do into a forward free run, and because free runs cancel into blocking, you can cancel any attack into blocking. This is an absolute game changer. I played a game as blind as possible, so when I came across this several hours in, it blew my mind. Manual cancels eliminate having to worry about your move being unsafe. Then I discovered something else. Yuri's free run attack restands enemies, enabling your party to keep a combo going or you to keep up pressure. Comboing skills, art combos, party arts, OTGs, restands, manual cancels, backstep cancels, and the entire overlimit mechanic, final strikes. You've got a lot of tools to use to be creative with your combos. There are even combo videos for this game, it's insane. The worst thing about combat had to have been flying enemies. They were annoying to hit and they move fast. Also, I think jump should have been its own button. I jumped so many times when I didn't want to, even like L3 or R3 or something. I also think it would have been pretty cool if on the UI in battle it showed what arts were mapped to which button and direction, something like what Monster Hunter does. How's the gameplay outside of combat though? You've got a myriad of towns and dungeons to explore. The Imperial capital you start in really nails the feeling of a cozy hometown. One of the first things I noticed though was the frame rate. The Switch version will lag a bit in massive indoor locations and most outdoor locations, but almost never drop frame rate in battle. 99.9% of the time it never hits 30 either. Although personally I'd prefer a consistent 30 FPS over an inconsistent 40 to 60. Combat almost never has frame rate issues though, so it's not really a big deal. But when you do go indoors and you see 60 FPS, it just feels good on the eyes. The game has quality of life options I wish were in other JRPGs, such as instantly appearing text, font options, and status ailments on item descriptions. The party dialogue in battle also tries to steer you in the right direction. Characters that use items too often will get called out for it, same with wasting TP. It will let you know if you should be doing something differently. Casters will also call out if they're getting hit while casting. The gimmicks featured in dungeons are pretty timid and I appreciate that. You have one tool for solving puzzles, and on top of moving statues, you have this ring that shoots a... Random battles happen when you run into enemies, but you can use your to stun them before fighting or freeze them to go around them. Sometimes the shoot is inconsistent though, mostly on slopes. Not too big of a deal though, because skills really give you enough incentive to want to do random battles often. The game also had this pretty common theme where random battles would start right after a cutscene.
Sure, maybe we can find it.
Like I said before, I played this game blind, so it actually took me 30 hours into the game to discover that you could fast travel. And then there's the run cycles for all the characters. You can lead with any character you want, but I found that Yuri has the best run cycle animation, so I just stuck with Yuri. Now I want to talk about the English dubbing and the localization of this game in general. I think the localization of the new content added in the definitive edition was rushed to say the least. There's just a lot of small things wrong. For the most part, it's pretty good, but it has issues that wore on me after 50 hours.
Zaude. Zaude.
Zod.
I don't even care if they say I'm wrong, I just wish it was consistent. For the definitive edition of the game, they recorded more lines 10 years after the game's original release. The main character Yuri, voiced by Troy Baker, is replaced by Grant George. This leads to Yuri's voice noticeably switching even mid-conversation.
It'll take more than this to keep him down. He'll come.
Oh, Patty's here.
Did you have a look at what your grandpa left behind?
I don't think any other character's new lines stand out at all besides Yuri's. I just don't think the new actor matches Baker. While I could have played in Japanese, I think the issue of replacing Troy Baker is bigger than just an option. The main character having two voices is a really poor choice for the definitive edition of the game. I would have preferred if Yuri had been re-recorded. If Persona 4 Golden could re-record everyone, then they could have done it here. Outside of that, combat lines are great, and the game is full of a ton of quotable lines. Skits, which is when the game pauses to let the characters talk, are done really well from the voice actors, but I think the newer ones sound bad, like the audio quality of them.
Do you think he came to Cave Mock all by himself? There are so many monsters around.
Who do they think they are? What a bunch of total clods.
Even early in the game, there was this weird issue where audio is like panning back and forth.
You see what I did? That was nothing.
Repeat helped too.
Thanks.
Does anyone else notice how many Switch games have audio issues? I turned the audio 2 pegs down from the max setting and haven't had problems since though. Lastly, I want to bring up DLC. First, costumes. Some are pretty good. I think Repeat gets the best one though. The second DLC is boosters, and I think you should stay away from these until New Game Plus. The boosters give you 40 levels, 900,000 money, and materials to craft mid-game gear. The serious problem is that the game is designed around you obtaining your skills over time from using weapons. If you use the mid-game gear gear right away, you will screw yourself over by lacking a lot of skills you should have built up over time from lower level weapons that are key skills. So I held off on finishing this review until I finished the game, and now that I have one question that I need answered. Sometimes after I did boss fights, I was told secret mission completed. Sometimes boss fights also stopped and said great during them. I don't think the game ever explained these things, so I'm just gonna take a minute to see what that's about. So this series is apparently notorious for missables. Kudos to it not affecting my playthrough, but oh my lord. I'm gonna read you the process of getting this one costume in the game. This one is DLC, but this is a good example of the level of missability things can be in the game. On your first visit to Heliord, speak to a man named Drake. On your first visit to Nordopolicus, speak to Drake on your way to the Colosseum. While in Dongres after an important story event, head into the Western Tavern to see a scene. Leave and you'll see another scene. Then, near the end of the game, while you're in Capua Torum, go to the dock to see two dudes speaking to a lady who runs an orphanage. Speak to her and pay her 500,000 gold, then leave town for another scene. And then at the very last town you visit at the end of the game, talk to Drake once more. You've got to follow that all throughout your playthrough, and if you can't go back to anything, you have to visit it at the times I said. If you don't, the title's gone, you can't get it anymore, you can't get the costume anymore. Arts, the best weapons, cutscenes, quests, skits, items, character development I found were all missable things if you did not look for them. And I kinda thought I was too. Now some of these things aren't permanently missable, in fact when you get to the final act of the game is when most side quests actually open up. Granted, I had to review the game, so pardon if I rushed 50 hours, but I'm just blown away by how much is missable. Since finishing the game and finishing this review, I've started on side quests and other content, and it seems pretty substantial. I wanted to get this review out, but make no mistake, I intend on doing a New Game Plus playthrough. Most people seem to recommend not worrying about it though on the first playthrough and use a guide on your New Game Plus playthrough. I guess I have to agree, because I didn't really have any hang-ups or obstacles I couldn't overcome blind. However, for New Game Plus, you don't get to automatically transfer everything over to the New Game Plus save. No, you can only transfer a certain amount of things based on your cumulative grade. Grades come from every battle you do. You are given a shop of things you can spend your total grade on to carry over. Just keep that in mind. You can get a higher grade with some grinding just before finishing the game at least. So that concludes my review of Tales of Vesperia. It's a massive adventure packed full of some well-developed characters and solid gameplay giving you figure out what to do. I'm pretty satisfied and I felt it was a really fun adventure. Not the greatest of all time, but I think it's up there. I think if you're really into JRPGs, you should give it a shot if you haven't already. I'm open to recommendations on what to play next in the series and want to hear what you guys think of Tales of Vesperia. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.